This is Defiance Daily Dispatches for the Defiant. It's been just 48 hours since the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where an alleged armed man attempted to make his way into the ballroom at the Washington Hilton, where he was apparently targeting Trump administration officials and maybe even the president. But in the wake of what should be an almost unifying event, one that folks across the political spectrum can condemn, the White House is showing its true priorities. In fact, Donald Trump and his administration are trying to take advantage of what happened by arguing for one of the president's vanity projects. Now, while the country is still trying to make sense of all of this, debating the facts, talking about the rhetoric, asking what comes next, there has still been no clear and steady response from this administration. Instead, something else is taking shape, folks, an effort to turn this moment into leverage. And right now, Donald Trump is using the incident for pushing for what he's wanted all along: more control, more spending, less opposition, even going out there last night on 60 Minutes and implying that this attack was because of political opposition to him rather than the work of one deranged man. And that's where we take our program tonight. We're going to walk through what is unfolding, the lies, the truth, and all the speculations in between, so together we can see this moment for what it really is, condemn what needs to be condemned, including what led to all of this. Remember, at the top of the evening, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had said, "Shots will be fired tonight." Now, she, of course, wasn't talking about the shooter. She was talking for whatever Donald Trump had planned, while standing in front of members of the press corps who have watched the First Amendment face its greatest assault in modern times. The White House press secretary hinted that Donald Trump was going to double down before this incident happens. That's an important piece of context that we cannot lose sight of. Before we jump in, let me just say this. If this is the first time you're with us and you're asking, what is defiance.org? What is Defiance News? Go check us out. We would love to have you as part of this effort. Please like, share, and subscribe. We exist for the sole purpose of answering the question, what can I do? Helping people find ways to push back against the abuses of power we are seeing from this executive branch. And that's also why this story today is so critically important. So we start with our first section today talking about what Donald Trump did immediately following this incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday. Because when he went to the White House and he held a press conference at the podium after this event happened, he outlined how the event represented an immediate need for his ballroom, a vanity project that Donald Trump has been pushing, even in the earliest days of the Iran conflict, when bombs were dropping on a foreign country. Donald Trump was veering off script and talking about the drapes in his prospective ballroom, how badly he wanted a ballroom. I'll tell you, in that period of time, there was little conversation from Donald Trump about how this was a national security necessity, and more about how important it was for the prestige of the office to have a ballroom. But now you're hearing something different from this administration. You are hearing this administration suddenly, since Saturday, double down on this idea that for security purposes, this ballroom, this $400 million ballroom is needed, and implying that events like the White House Correspondents' Dinner should never happen outside the White House grounds again, or perhaps any other event. Because if this ballroom is so necessary, then presumably the president can't go to other events besides events in this ballroom. But here's what's especially weird about this. As soon as Donald Trump started talking about how the shooting represented a need for his self-named vanity project, the Trump Ballroom, MAGA followed suit. MAGA influencer and defector Ashley St. Clair explains.
So last week, I told you guys that all of MAGA is paid and they coordinate their messaging in lockstep via group chats. And what do you know? All of these people came to the conclusion that after they saw what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, their first thought was all independently, Trump needs his ballroom. The statistical likelihood of this happening in a vacuum, if we are to stipulate that these people are not coordinated, the statistical likelihood of this happening, that they all came to the same conclusion, not probable, okay? I think it's also important to note that one of the main group chats in which they coordinate this messaging is literally called Fight, Fight, Fight after the attempt on Trump's life in Butler. Okay, and this has the official Trump war room, members of the administration, including James Blair, and all your favorite MAGA influencers. And I would log on and show you more of these messages, but I can't log on to Twitter because they're suing me for $75,000.
There you have it, folks. These responses don't seem to be organic. They are marching orders, ones that Republican lawmakers have followed suit on with a parade of TV appearances since the attempted shooting on Saturday night, backing the call for a ballroom. But here's where we need to take a step back, because while this is all being framed as a security upgrade, it's now being framed as, a ballroom needed just to protect the president. It comes just days after new reporting revealed a much more complicated reality. Last week, a lawsuit filed by Public Citizen forced the release of a 14-page agreement that lays out how this $400 million ballroom project is actually being financed. And that agreement shows the White House working through a nonprofit to raise money, allowing its donors to be anonymous. Now, while the administration itself helps identify and steer those donors into the project, they get to hide who they are. They get to pay money for something Donald Trump says is critically important to him and remain discreet. And this is why that matters, because nothing in the agreement prevents donors who have business before the federal government from contributing or disclosing who they are, meaning that companies with major federal contracts can give money to a project tied directly to the president. At the same time, parts of the broader construction, especially the underground infrastructure that's allegedly tied to a presidential emergency bunker, are still expected to rely on taxpayer dollars. Here's John Gollinger, an attorney who brought the disclosure forward on CNN last week, debunking why the White House originally tried to keep this under wraps.
So, okay, the White House, obviously, they told the Washington Post, it's standard practice to not post an agreement like this because national security is involved, right? We're talking about, a building involving the White House. And they said, they keep emphasizing, their post was President Trump is working 24/7 to make America great again. They end with at no taxpayer expense. What do you say to that part when he says, this is, people should be celebrating this, that companies are paying for it? And by the way, he said he himself is also paying for it.
Sure. Two things. Number one, taxpayers are paying for all of it because the companies that gave the money to this project, though just the ones we know about, we did a report that found that they have $279 billion in government contracts in the last 5 years. So those companies pretty likely are going to get a lot more money from the American taxpayers than they're putting into this project. So whether it's through being ripped off in the marketplace or inflated government contracts that we pay for, the American people are going to pay for this. Another thing is that the president has increasingly said that the part under the ballroom is a part of the project in response to the other litigation that's tried to stop the project, right?
Right. Well, he's saying that's the national security, so you can't get involved and get your oversight.
So if that's true, I would like to know from the president and his people whether these dollars from private donors are paying for this underground bunker or whether the American people are paying for this underground bunker, because that's not at all clear.
All right, so a ballroom that is being built only due to the access that Donald Trump's donors have to his political power. That's what this is. But the whole thing shifted even further into focus today as Donald Trump's Justice Department tried to sue in the wake of Saturday night's incident to shut down one of the lawsuits that is blocking construction of the ballroom. They argued the case should be dropped for, once again, national security reasons. But today, the group behind that lawsuit rejected that logic outright, claiming the claim made by the Justice Department was, quote, incorrect and irresponsible, and pointing out that the law still requires Congress to authorize construction like this. I want to bring into the conversation my Defiance.org co-founder, Xander Schultz. Xander, before we get into all of the other things that are related to this shooting, this attempted shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, this seems to be the most crass potential response from the administration, is to take something that was a Trump vanity project and just spin it into a national security argument. And I'll leave you with one thing. I want to get your reaction to this. The White House Correspondents' Dinner isn't organized by the White House. So they're trying to make people think, even though White House is in the title, it's organized by the journalists who report at the White House. So Trump and his officials are trying to make it seem like if only they had had this ballroom built, the event would have been there. But it's not a White House hosted event. It's a private event held by a private organization, a nonprofit, to raise charity for journalists. And it happens to be the reporters that work at the White House. So this would not have prevented Donald Trump from, experiencing the security incident that they experienced. But they don't want to talk about that. They just want to use this crisis to try to get people to step out of the way of something that members of Congress have accused the administration of using as a bribery vehicle to support, businesses that are lobbying the government. What's your take?
A couple $100 million investment to make a couple $100 billion is pretty good investment for those folks investing in the ballroom. We need some sort of like "We Live in a Kleptocracy" song you and I can record at some point. And very much, this is like the ultimate smack in the face with that reality. The swamp is not drained yet. I don't think, Miles, would you consider the swamp drained at this point? Or
no,
I think alligators in it. We made it a little more vicious. It's not good news, friends. Any of this, but they are like, this is what they're the kings at, right? It's like they use emergencies to advance agendas, and they lie about emergencies. They make up emergencies. We're going to get into kind of the ongoing conversation here in our next segment on the kind of lack of faith in the authenticity of anything this administration is engaged with. But I mean, it feels like, in my house, maybe this actually existed. I don't know. There's a list of agenda items that they have to get to, and they're just waiting for one emergency after another to say, okay, this is the opportunity to push this out. They clearly have like a signal chat going with all these right-wing influencers where they try to coordinate it at these moments. To be honest, it's good political organizing. Like, I did political organizing on the left. This is the type of shit you do. You try to get all your influential people together, get a unified message, and make sure it hits when there's a moment. So they are doing good political organizing. It's just around a weird message. Why do we have to rally around this freaking ballroom? You said it's a national security issue. It's not even, it's just like Trump security issue. It's not even a national security issue. It's these guys in particular. So, it is so odd to see so many people. I saw Meghan McCain up there as one of the names in that kind of right-wing influencers that are pushing that we now need a ballroom. It's so many people. It's so interesting watching so many people fall in line for like what mission. On the left, there's like at least in the circles I was in, there was a mission. It was a more equitable society. It was a more free society. It was a more true democracy. It's so odd seeing all these people trash their reputations and align themselves with this administration. To what end? Where are they going? What are they advancing? What is so honorable or idealistic that they think we're marching towards by falling in line with this administration?
Yes, and yes. I mean, it's.
I know. We're treading over ground. In some ways, the news is new and the news is old with this fucking administration.
It is. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm going back to it because Hannah and I were sitting up and we were watching the news all unfold on Saturday night, and I was actually, funny side story, and I mentioned this to you this morning, Xander. I was supposed to be a block away from the White House Saturday night. I was supposed to be at the Substack held an event for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I was going to go to that, but I decided just to stay home, and I'm glad I did because they cordoned everything off. It got weird, But while at home watching the whole thing proceed, I turned to Hannah and I just said, they're not going to waste any time in using this episode to justify things that have nothing to do with this episode. And, I hopped on Twitter and, I typed that out, and, Hannah and I had a conversation about it where she was like, do you maybe want to give them the benefit of the doubt, wait a beat and see what happens? And I'd sent that tweet out that, they were going to justify things that had nothing to do with it. And I thought for a second, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. And then within minutes, Donald Trump is at the podium saying, this is why I need my ballroom. I mean, it just felt just so nakedly transactional, so exploitive that he immediately wanted to go from this crisis to, well, this is why I wanted to do my passion project all along. Bullshit. I can tell you, I'm calling bullshit on it. Donald Trump did not get into this job in a second term and say, I need a ballroom to make sure that people are safe during events at the White House. That was not his primary purpose, right? That was not his primary purpose for putting gold lettering all over the White House and putting gold all over inside the Oval Office or renovating marble bathrooms inside the residence. Did any of those things have anything to do with security? No, this is about vanity, vanity, vanity. And also, he gave businesses a direct way to cozy up to him. I want you to understand, folks who are listening, the White House Ballroom Project is the closest that Donald Trump could possibly get to the line of bribery without leaping across it. He is signaling to the whole world, this matters to me more than what we're doing. Is it closer
than Trump coin? I don't know. They're both the Trump coin's pretty naked as well.
Well, that's a direct way to do it. Yeah. This is the closest you can get with a government project before it just becomes bribery. There's certainly other ways people have figured out to try to influence Donald Trump, but he signals every day how important this is. He interrupts his train of thought about life or death issues to talk about the ballroom all the time. So these businesses know, man, if I help him make this happen, certainly I'm going to be on the nice list instead of the naughty list in the White House. This is really dangerous. This is why things like this don't happen. This is why there's disclosure and transparency laws. And also, it's clearly why the White House fought so hard to keep that contract secret. It took lawsuits to expose this contract. The White House wouldn't release it. So, I mean, it's just amazing. Xander, I want to play this clip for you and get your reaction on the back end, because we've got Member of Congress Jamie Raskin went on Meet the Press yesterday saying how this ballroom won't help anyone in the American public. And take a look and let's get your reaction on the back. And actually, I think it's Face the Nation.
President Trump talk about this demonstrating the importance of the new ballroom, and he sent out some messages about the ballroom, and that might help people who are visiting the White House. But what about people who are in shopping malls and movie theaters and high schools and elementary schools across the country? So I hope we can have a serious bipartisan national conversation about what we can do to improve public safety for everybody.
Yeah, sounds like a good agenda. Keep that up, Jamie Raskin, and the rest of the Democratic Party. Yes. Talk about, what do they call them? Kitchen table issues. Good job. Keep hammering that. The guy making gold ballrooms is no longer the people's champ, for sure.
But what's weird about it is the mainstream press, and we can talk about this differently in new media. There's no one to fire us. The mainstream, other than our members, if the folks who are club members of defiance.org want to fire us because they don't like us telling them the truth about this, you can fire us. You can leave the organization, but we can talk about the truth here. And the mainstream media, they have danced around this for the past 48 hours. They have been scared to criticize the administration's pivot to the ballroom and call it what it truly is, because they're worried that the administration will come back and destroy them and attack them and go after them. Guys, this is so obvious. It's not a national security issue. And let me take you back to a real national security crisis. Does anyone who is listening to my voice, who was alive on 9/11, Remember George W. Bush talking about building a ballroom to keep everyone safe after
It's got to be
terrorists
a big ballroom,
had just
nationwide ballroom.
flown airplanes into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and crashed in Pennsylvania in a flight that was supposed to hit the White House. And I don't remember George W. Bush saying, I have to have an indestructible ballroom. Give me a break. That's not what this is for. It's not for security. It may have the secondary benefit of having bulletproof glass in the windows, but the ballroom is not for security. Donald Trump has just exploited this assassination attempt to go get himself a monument on the White House lawn that he hopes will stay there forever. That's all this is. That's all this is. Unless, Andrew, you've got other information that he's going to let this become like a children's museum or something like that.
I mean, I have some advice on how to make the nation less violent, if you like. In fact, I have a quote from a president, which I know, Miles, that's your favorite content. Whenever you have a nice quote from a president.
You get me going with dead founder quotes all the time.
So here's one for you. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. That's our boy John F. Kennedy. And as people see their democracy disintegrate and feel like their peaceful revolution, which is what democracy is less and less likely, you see political violence rise. That is a historical fact that is always correlated. And look, you and I talk about ending this violence by defeating this man at the midterms, right? But for some people in a nation of 330 million people, the violence that's happening in between now and then is intolerable. The children killed in Iran and that are continuing to be killed in Iran. People like my good friend Johnny Perez, a criminal justice reform hero that's been sitting in awful conditions at an ICE detention center for the last 6 months and is still sitting there. We're in a situation where institutional violence is being wielded in one direction. And we're asking hundreds of millions of people to not throw counterpunches and to engage peacefully. And that is a tall order to get everyone on the same page doing that. And so one way to create a more peaceful country is to knock it the fuck off Donald Trump with all this authoritarian behavior and all this cruelty. And people won't be in such a desperate posture to save their friends or save their family members or save their neighbors that every once in a while someone acts extremely. And so that's my advice. Donald Trump, you really have the ability to ramp down the violence by ramping down your own violence, your institutional violence, your institutional cruelty. And I promise you the other violence will be reduced as well.
I think I could not agree more. If Donald Trump himself worked to actually turn down the temperature, he would improve the security situation in this country. And that's never to say that a violent attack on an elected official is justified. It's not. We have to, as a society, punish this man. We have to put him in prison. We have to charge him. Why? Because that's what the rule of law is. But we also need a president who actually works on suppressing political violence rather than fanning the flames of it. And I think you're right, Xander. We'll probably look at some of these clips in a little bit, but just a litany over the past 10 years of examples. I mean, much longer than that, but since he's been in public office, examples of Donald Trump fanning the flames of revenge and retribution and violence, rhetoric like stand back and stand by, to the Proud Boys ahead of January 6th, celebrating the deaths of his opponents, wishing death upon his opponents. I mean, really horrific stuff, wishing death on members of Congress, talking about how people who've criticized him in the olden days would have been hung and shot. He's instigated violence against my family. He's instigated his supporters to threaten us with death and destruction.
Yes.
Specifically, I've lived it. This man is a violence machine.
And Miles, when they say the left, is instigating political violence, you've never seen resistance leaders like us advocate for violence. Yeah. Like the institutions of the left, the resistance, whatever you call it, everyone working against Trump now, which is more than the left. You don't see their political leaders saying things like this. You don't see their unofficial leaders like us advocating for violence. Like I said, it's a country of hundreds of millions. So, and no one's got control of all hundreds of millions, but what we do have control of is our institutions and our leadership. And you never see that from us. On their side, it is the president, the vice president, and his top advisors fanning the flames of political violence. And it's a massive, massive distinction.
I mean, like, for anyone who, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Someone who was sitting in the conversation with us would say, name one example. And I mean, immediately you could say, because they'd say, well, when has JD Vance done this? Well, I don't know. The same JD Vance who seemed to share in the view that innocent Americans in Minnesota were domestic terrorists.
Yes.
And that they were right to be killed by law enforcement. I mean, some really intense rhetoric coming out of this administration, an administration that has sent armed forces into U.S. cities and states in a very obvious crackdown, not incidentally tied to the president and his policies, directed there explicitly by the president. I mean, the administration has put Americans at gunpoint, and still, incredibly, the political opposition in this country has remained peaceful and defiant. That, to me, has been remarkable. Yes. And Xander is part of the reason why the defiance in this country has grown to what it is there is enormous moral contrast between all of you out there who are standing up to this administration and them. They think they can't advance Donald Trump's agenda except at the barrel of a gun. You think you can advance it peacefully in the streets, and you have. And that's a really, really important contrast to maintain. I mean, I get the instinct after all of these crazy Trump policies to say, enough with it. We've got to take back our government. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to remain peaceful and lawful and defiant. And that is how we win the day. I mean, Xander, I also want to, shifting into this conversation around political violence, there was something that was so notable in the 24 hours after this happened, which was just the explosion of conspiracy theories and anger on social media. It didn't have to be that way. I mean, I want to take you again back to a time. Let's just imagine after 9/11, even though a lot of Democrats didn't like George W. Bush, let's imagine that there had been weeks later, another assassination attempt on the president of the United States. The country would have come together because leaders came together. I mean, someone we're going to have on the program this week, former House Majority Leader Dick Gebhardt, Democrat, stood on the steps of the U.S. Capitol and sang "God Bless America," holding the hands of his fellow members of Congress because we stood together as a country. After this divisive administration and everything it's done, well, it's led to a chaotic, fractured nation. We had debates on social media about whether this was a real attack or a staged attack, and people blaming the system and people blaming each other, and folks saying the left is responsible for violence and folks saying it's the right that's responsible for political violence. But this didn't just come out of nowhere, Xander. It didn't come out of nowhere because we have been, for the past decade, watching these surges in the core indicators that lead to political violence. I mean, you know this. You and I have talked about this for years. Hell, I wrote half of a book about just this subject, which is those core indicators, the blinking red lights of whether we're trending towards political violence in this country, are blaring red lights at this point. In fact, there was a survey that was just talked about in the New York Times the other day about how 40% of Americans now believe that we are in the end times, the end of days, the apocalypse. That's a really scary number. And you and I have talked about this other number before because I've used it a lot the past few months, which is that 1 in 3 Americans now say political violence might be justified to get the country back on track. 1 in 3. And I always compare that number to the stat of how many people own a cat. 1 in 3 Americans own a cat. And it's now just as common to own a cat as it is to think we need to.
It's 100% correlated. Every cat lady is a political extremist. Watch out for those cat people.
We have an announcement to make today. Yeah, it's 100% correlated. It's too good. But I mean, that's how ubiquitous this has become. I even thought it was shocking, Xander, after Donald Trump left office in 2020, when the numbers hit 10%, 10% of Republicans thought that Donald Trump might need to be violently reinstalled into the White House. 10%. And I barreled all around the country for years after that saying, this is insane that 1 in 10, it was actually 1 in 10 Americans, not just 1 in 10 Republicans. 1 in 10 Americans think that we need to violently put this man back in power. The fact that we're now up to 1 in 3 Americans basically having a favorable attitudes towards political violence is really scary. And this guy, Trump, has contributed a lot to it. However, I will say, it's not just Trump. This is society-wide. I mean, whether people are like it or not, you go to that survey that I cited from NPR, the 1 in 3 Americans, do you want to know the divide? Is it mostly Republicans? No. Is it mostly Democrats? No. It's literally evenly split.
It's down in the middle.
And that may not be you.
I think, Miles, like one thing that's going on that Trump's a contributor to is just the information silos we're living in. Sometimes when I look at that speech Trump did before January 6th or that event, I try to like flip who the speakers are and how I would react. Like, what if it wasn't Trump? It was Obama. And what if it wasn't Rudy Giuliani? It was Don Lemon. And they're all telling me the election's been stolen and America is about to go down the toilet, and it is on you as a patriot to disrupt this event. Like, we're only as good as our social signals. Like, we rely on experts and people we look up to for information. We can't be scientists and political experts, and we delegate that responsibility to people we follow. And we live in these really challenging information environments that are not regulated. We still have Section 230 that's not regulating social media, and algorithms are creating this confirmation bias, and it feels like we're getting the whole picture. And so I'm in somewhat, there's times I earnestly feel bad for the January 6th people, because when I flip that and think about what the social signals would have felt like for me if I saw that speech with Obama and Don Lemon and, insert your most trusted leader into that equation, I feel empathy and sympathy for them. We are all being victimized by such a biased understanding of our neighbors, of our fellow citizens, and of the world around.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most, crucial findings, and I can't remember if you were at it or not. Did you come, Xander, to the thing I did in New York with Jonathan Haidt a couple of years ago, where we did
but now I'm jealous. I love Jonathan Haidt so much. When we first teamed up, I was quoting him so much with Righteous Mind. Do you remember that? And you're like, that book's 10 years old.
Yeah. That's so
late
true.
to the game.
I think that's when we first bonded. I was trying to look for it on my bookshelf. If you don't follow Jonathan Haidt, you should. Great guy. He wrote a book in 2011, 2012 when Obama was president called The Righteous Mind, basically why the right and left hate each other. And he brought together a lot of different threads from evolutionary biology and sociology to explain why are Americans so divided, right? Where does the tribalism come from? And he gets to a very important point in that book where he connects it to basically the need for survival, right? We're very tribal, in a state of nature to protect ourselves. And so we see our tribes as central to our survival. Well, over time, our tribes have become these political tribes.
Yes.
I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. And the debate in this country, as it's gotten more visceral, has made people feel like when the other side is in power, it's a threat to their life. It's existential. Yes. And that's now reflected in Pew surveys that used to show only a minority of people held that view. Now, a majority of partisans, a majority of self-described Democrats and Republicans say that the other side represents a mortal threat to their existence. Why? Here's the connection point. Because Haidt and many others have made abundantly clear that they view the other side taking power as meaning the system will no longer work for them. There's no longer trust that minority rights, your rights when the majority is in power, will be protected, that you have no opportunity to create change through the system. You have to go around the system itself or attack the underlying system. That is the source of political violence, is you stop believing in institutions and believe your only way is to go around the system and maybe blow it up. And that is where leadership matters. Like you just said, Xander, you talked about Trump's speech. Trump can't necessarily help the fact that Americans are tribal. He can't change our programming. It's not just Americans, it's all humans. We're tribal. No leader can change that, but they can steer it. And Barack Obama faced these challenges as president. George W. Bush did. Every president has faced the challenge in moments of division, whether to amplify those divisions and those tribal impulses or try to bridge those divides. That's a very, very central challenge every president has described facing. And when put in those situations, Donald Trump has chose division. He has chosen not to rally people together. He has chosen not to find common ground and it has made the problem decidedly worse. So yes, while Democrats and Republicans might equally have an eerie, favorable attitude towards political violence right now, at least the 1 in 3 that do, the leader right now is an elected Republican who can put his finger on the scales, and it's evident where Donald Trump has put his finger.
It's so funny that clip of McCain responding to the person in the crowd that said, I don't trust Obama because he's a Muslim. That clip just came up for me last night as I was doing my normal, doom scroll right before I go to bed, which I need to shift away from that behavior. But this was a nice uplifting clip that I got to see. And it just reminds you how dramatically different the environment is that we're in now from just 18 years ago. I guess it's becoming a decent amount of time yet. But McCain, who was such a flag bearer of the Republican Party for so long, his response about, no, this is a family man, he's a patriot, he's one of us, and this is what makes America beautiful. Was such a beautiful response, and what you need to hear from leadership in this moment. But in some ways, Miles, like I don't know, maybe this is just the optimist in me. I think all this pain is good, because the reason, on top of like leadership not having the right language in this moment, people are really facing increasing challenges, like supporting yourself through a good job. The ability to do so has been disintegrating for many people. Mass incarceration has been rising. Now immigrants rightfully feel like their lives are on the line if a certain group's in power, because it has been. And so, all that to say, some of those fears are now creating a reality where we elect people that really do put people, really do threaten people. And it's kind of on all of us to figure out a system that we can share, or goals we can share as a nation, and a vision for the nation that lets people feel safe again and included in that future. Because a lot of people are feeling like they are not included, and rightfully so. I think reality is actually like reflecting that back to them. And I just want to say, I almost don't want to use the word left and right anymore, because I do feel like we are actually past that moment, that 1 in 3 believe in political violence. I'm increasingly hearing people on the left and right, and I try to spend a lot of time with everyone, say they are just sick of who's in charge. They are sick of the elites. They're sick of the corruption. I think there is this massive opportunity we're barreling towards because of that shared viewpoint on us not necessarily being divided left and right, but up and down.
Well, let's contrast that quote that you cited, how McCain responded to that allegation of the crowd, with what we are seeing at the White House, because today, well, just take a look. Caroline Leavitt had this to say during the White House press conference.
To constantly falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence. So, Xander, sounds pretty familiar. White House calling for unity and let's come together on the one hand, while literally going to the microphone the first business day after this attack and blaming the political opposition for the fact that Donald Trump was targeted by a lunatic, right? It's only a Looney Tune guy who decides that the only way to fix this problem is to go shoot people. There's been plenty of moments of major change in this country where we've accomplished that without actually resorting to the violence. But here's what's really interesting about it, Xander. The internet was pretty quick to put a montage together and to show who else has been sharing the rhetoric that Caroline Leavitt was condemning. Take a look.
Donald Trump took to True Social, branding Arizona Senator Mark Kelly and 5 other congressional Democrats as traitors who deserve the death penalty.
Over the weekend, Trump effectively said that Milley should be executed for treason.
The president reacting to Mueller's death on Truth Social, saying, "I'm glad he's dead."
Knock the crap out of him, would you? I will pay for the legal fees. If I say don't hurt him, then the press says, Well, Trump isn't as tough as he used to be.
President Trump is responding to Rob Reiner's death, posting on Truth Social. Reiner's death was due to, quote, the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome.
The former president posted this photo of himself getting ready to swing a baseball bat next to a photo of Bragg. Today, Bragg's office received a package containing white powder and a threatening note.
I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
President Trump tweeting, when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. We had some people, some rough guys like we have right in here, and they started punching back. It was a beautiful thing. I would have been boom, boom, boom. I'll beat that.
He's threatening riots if he gets charged with a misdemeanor.
She says, you know, the quote, potential death and destruction in such a false charge could be catastrophic for our country.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will. Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, I said, you can take the hand away, okay? Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. Our country is under siege. We're going to the Capitol to make your voices heard. And you have to get your people to fight because you'll never take back our country with weakness. If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Fight like hell, he told him, Xander, and they did. I got to tell you this. I've worked for a lot of politicians in Washington. Only one of them has ever suggested that I shoot innocent, unarmed civilians. That was Donald Trump. All right.
We also missing from that montage is a civilization will die tonight. I know that wasn't pointed domestically. Also, pretty violent rhetoric coming from those guys. So yeah.
Well, and look, one thing that I want to urge folks today is you can hold two thoughts in your head at the same time. You can absolutely go out there and say, we have to, as a society, condemn the man who wanted to go shoot up a room of unarmed people. And also say, and I have a right to continue telling the truth that this is the most corrupt president in American history who is doing extraordinary damage to democratic institutions. My right to criticize this president does not make me an accomplice in a shooting. That is really, really scary that Donald Trump and his administration are trying to make that point, right? They have done the opposite of go to that podium at the White House and try to unify this country by suggesting that opposing this president is tantamount to trying to kill him, right? The 99.9% repeating, the vast majority of Americans in this country who oppose this president aren't trying to do it with a gun. They're trying to do it at the ballot box. But this man has used violence as a tool of politics, did incite a domestic terrorist attack on the Capitol, has directed his staff to kill innocent civilians. I was there. I was one of them. If he wants me to challenge him on it, I gladly would have an open debate about that with Donald Trump. Does he want to have a debate? I don't recommend
debating Miles. As someone who debates Miles a lot, I don't recommend it. He's very good at it.
but that's what he did. I don't know any other American president that wanted to shoot and kill innocent civilians, but this man did. And there's a way for us to fix this, folks, and that is never elect people like this ever again. In the immediate term, put in a big ass counterbalance into the Congress to put a check on this man. Right now, he is unchecked. And in the wake of this, we would have expected, we would have hoped any president would have been more unifying, but the divisiveness is just going to make this a more dangerous episode altogether.
I think importantly, just to go back to the point I made earlier, you don't need to condemn the attack because this isn't a politician of yours. This isn't a political leader you support. Unless you were carrying that guy's flag on your truck, like the MAGA folks are carrying the MAGA flag on their truck. It wasn't a part of any movement. They're trying to create this false equivalency that somehow this act is part of a political project of the left or the act of a political leader on the left. That's not the case. That's not the case. This is an individual. You don't need to condemn it because it's not part of your movement. There is, on the other hand, a political leadership group, a movement that is promoting violence and trying to kind of nakedly maintain violence by using emergency powers that they keep trying to provoke into action and trying to maintain power through potential use of force. We just heard stand back and stand by, Proud Boys. We heard the speech before January 6th. We saw, to your point, them occupying Minneapolis, trying to create an opportunity, trying to provoke the people of Minneapolis to attack them so they could claim emergency powers. We have a political movement that is full throttle embracing violent tactics to provoke violence so they can claim emergency powers. That's what we know. No matter how else you feel about this issue, that's what we know is going on. And this is, yet another chapter in that book.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, Xander. I mean, that's where I wanted us to close today, is talking about what this really comes down to, which is an attack on free speech. Because Donald Trump has, and we'll get to this in a moment, he has signaled what this really looks like to him. But I want people to remember how we got to this point, which is that on Saturday, before this episode happened, Donald Trump took the stage. He was preparing to take the stage for the first time as president at a White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's a dinner that he has boycotted year after year. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he told us as a staff, he told us as a country that the White House that the press rather, was the enemy of the people, right? He didn't want to go to that dinner. But over the past year, since he came back in, he's finally been able to make good on his revenge against the media, his revenge against dissenters in this country, his revenge against critics. Donald Trump went to this dinner having spent a year going after the press, going after universities, going after nonprofits, going after any individual who has challenged or criticized him, using every means possible, using lawsuits, using investigations, threatening to pull licenses, threatening punishment, using the government to pressure critics into silence, threatening violence. That's what he's been doing for the past year. It has been historic, the effort that this president has taken to dismantle the First Amendment in this country. And then he was planning, according to reports, to show up at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and to double down, to excoriate the profession of the free press, to validate everything he had done as president, to expand presidential powers and to punish his adversaries. As Caroline Leavitt had said just before the event started, shots will be fired tonight. What she meant was the president of the United States was going to gloat and he was going to relish in the destruction that he has wrought against American democracy. Before anyone tried to storm the event, they were preparing to spike the football on top of the First Amendment. And now, after all of that has happened, they are trying to further fan the flames. And here's why. When Donald Trump spoke last night to Norah O'Donnell on 60 Minutes, there was a very, very telling moment. There was a telling moment that I want you to watch, and we'll talk about it on the back end. I want to see if you can catch what I'm talking about here in this clip.
Why don't you read it? You just did, so why don't you read it?
Well, he had a lot of anti-Christian rhetoric. He was part of a group called the Wide Awakes. He had attended a No Kings protest in California.
No Kings. Yeah.
What did security tell you about what may have been his motives?
The reason you have people like that is you have people doing no kings. I'm not a king. What I am, if I was a king, I wouldn't be dealing with you.
So, Xander, a couple things. The headlines picked up on that last part. So many of the headlines said that quote, Donald Trump, if I was a king, I wouldn't be dealing with you. And the way he said it, right? It's clear the man wants to be a king, right? All he's done is proven the point. He doesn't want to have to deal with.
He said that in a bitter tone. He was saying, because I'm not a king, I still have to deal with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to have to deal with the free press. But what he said before that is what I think every ear in America needs to hear. He said, you get people like this, like the shooter, because of things like no kings. Donald Trump is basically equating your dissent as a free American with danger.
Yeah.
That's what he's basically saying. He is saying that those of us who attended No Kings rallies are basically fostering presidential assassins. That's what the president's trying to tell me right now. By the way, the No Kings protests, the largest peaceful protests in American history. But this president, because he's so distraught that there's so much opposition to him, wants you to think, and used the aftermath of this shooting to basically say that the No Kings protests foment terrorists. What do you make of that, Sam?
And don't forget, he's got a more kind of specific project going on right now, which is to equate left nonprofits with extremism and violence, so he can both shut them down and then also shut down their funders who he is, saying are investing in extremism and political violence. So there's a specific project on top of telling all of us we're fomenting violence. There's a specific project on attacking the nonprofit sector and then the philanthropic sector that supports them that he's undertaking right now. I do want to say one thing, because this episode felt particularly a little bit dark. It's a dark moment.
We got good news to share this week, but go ahead.
Defiance members, we should be ready to buckle our seatbelts, because this is what winning looks like against an authoritarian effort. The reason they are flailing, the reason they are behaving more erratically, the reason they are trying increasingly more desperate and crazy shit is because we are winning. His popularity is plummeting. His allies in the Republican Party are losing special elections by incredible numbers, elections they shouldn't be losing. He knows their days are numbered, and he's increasingly trying wild shit to figure out any way they can hold on to power. And so the positive we should take from this is they know they are losing. They know they have a bad hand of cards, and they don't have shit to play in a straightforward manner. And so we need to buckle our seatbelt, as I mentioned. It is going to get wild. They're going to try increasingly erratic things as that window of opportunity closes for them. And it feels like it's getting pretty close to closed already. But as we approach midterms, and he knows a midterm defeat for the Republicans also means an impeachment for him. We are going to see some wild things take place. We should try our best to stay safe. We should stay peaceful, but we should know this is a little bit of the ride we're going to be on. There's nothing about this guy that says he will accept results. He never has accepted results. And there's nothing about him that says he will play fair. He's going to bend the rules. He's going to try to provoke violence. He's going to be god awful to his opponents and try to harass them in the ways he's already doing, as in the ways he's done to you, Miles. So all this is going to ramp up as we win, but you can be heartened by the fact that this is happening because we are winning, because we are coming together and kicking this guy's ass.
That's a very good point. I'm so glad you made it, my friend. And in the meantime, we're going to make sure that we are prepared for those extreme things that might happen. And, if this is the first time you've tuned into us, every Wednesday, we do what's called the weekly mission brief. Is we announce an effort that we are launching or an organization that we are supporting to push back against Trump's abuses of power. And one of the things we're going to talk about this Wednesday is, once again, election protection, because there's a lot of folks that are worried in the wake of this attack on Saturday. You might say, well, what does this have to do with the election? It has everything to do with the election. Donald Trump is going to try to use the threat of violence in this country to claim emergency powers. Miles, that sounds like an exaggeration. Just look at what he's done every single time. Every single time he's exploited attacks to try to advance his political agenda. Look at what happened after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The administration released one of the most draconian executive orders that's ever been issued in the modern era, NSPM 7, to basically designate political opposition groups as terrorist organizations. And in the wake of those measures taken last September and October, you have now started to see organizations being charged by the Justice Department. You alluded to it moments ago, Xander. The Southern Poverty Law Center was just charged days ago. And the Justice Department implied that an organization, a civil rights group that was built to crack down on domestic extremist groups, they're accusing it of having funded those groups because they sent informants to infiltrate the KKK. But they're saying, well, because you sent informants, those informants were basically helping the organization. That's it, folks. I mean, it's the stupidest rationale you could imagine. It would be like us saying that FBI informants inside of ISIS or Al-Qaeda were helping bin Laden blow up buildings. It doesn't make any sense at all. They are there to expose those organizations, but that's what this administration did. A wild abuse of power, a case that I doubt survives at all in the courts, but their purpose is not to bring successful prosecutions. It's to destroy these groups through costly litigation and public humiliation. That's what they're trying to do. And so in the lead up to the election at Defiance, we are very focused on how else might the administration try to do this? How else can we counter that? And how can we mobilize people to stay out there, to continue to exercise their free speech rights, and to not buy into this suggestion that doing so makes them a terrorist, or to believe that showing up and joyously celebrating with people at a No Kings protest to uphold democratic values is somehow a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's the most American thing you could do.
And like, honestly, it sounds kind of scary. You're saying they're going to flail, they're going to try all these things. What we've seen so far, they don't have the powers that they posture they have. They don't really have the powers they posture they have, and they failed in almost all of their intimidation efforts so far. You look at the cases against Comey and Letitia James. You look at the way they tried to intimidate Minneapolis, and now those ICE agents are, mostly out of that city. We are winning this fight over and over again across the board, and we just need to stay the course, gang. We're going to win this thing. We're going to win this thing. We're going to come out stronger and more together for it.
Agree with you, my friend. We will, and almost every week, it seems like we have a stronger and stronger cohort to make that happen.
Yes.
And I go back to what you said a little bit earlier, Xander. This reaction you're getting from the administration is not confidence and strength. It's complete fear. They are channeling the fear of their boss. Their boss is terrified that he's going to spend the end of his days in a federal penitentiary or from courthouse to courthouse to courthouse as he's sued over completely corrupt actions, as he's indicted by a future Justice Department. And you know what? I suspect he's right. I suspect that's what things are going to look like for him. And his staff is worried too, because they have carried all this water. They have done these things that he was told in the first term were illegal. But now they say, well, the president wants it. Maybe we're going to be in power forever. They're not going to be. And so they are running scared. This is a sign of weakness. Couldn't agree with you more, my friend. Why don't we close today with maybe an uplifting story, which is that it's a totally tonal shift here, folks. But we end every day with a segment we call Who is Joining the Defiance? And today on Who is Joining the Defiance, we head to a place called Delaney Hall, which is a New Jersey ICE prison. You might say, Miles, I thought this was going to be a good news story. Well, here's the thing. There's been a strict dress code here, blocking families from seeing each other. So volunteers stepped in and made sure that no one gets turned away over something this small. Take a look at this clip.
We're at Delaney Hall. It's a normal visiting hour. We have people coming to visit their loved ones who are held inside. They're not aware of how strict the dress code is, but we have seen infants who are rejected because they're wearing a onesie, because their legs are bare. It doesn't really make any sense. So we have clothes that we bring, clothes and shoes that we bring every visiting day, so that people can just throw something on over top and then go in to see their loved one.
Because they saved me last time with her too. She wore another pair of shoes that they said were inappropriate, so I'm very, very thankful.
People will be coming in things like flip-flops or sandals, Crocs. They'll be wearing shirts that maybe are sleeveless, and all of those things are against the dress code. So are things like ripped jeans. When people first come here, they're really in an anxious state. So we need to try to present as calm a face as possible to people so that we don't increase their anxiety.
This whole situation is crazy.
What we need to point back to is the system, and the system is where the cruelty comes from. They're doing maybe one of the hardest things they've ever done in their life, and it's for us to be here to accompany them while they do that, and to provide them with whatever support they need. The people who are inside know it makes a difference to have someone on the outside that you know is pulling for you, is thinking about you, is praying for you, and is helping your loved ones.
Oh man, that's a cool one. Props to our producer Mercedes for finding that one. And I normally can tell when Xander's going to cry. I feel
don't do that to me.
Feel like we might be close.
It was close. That's where my buddy Johnny Perez is being held. Johnny, if you probably don't know that name, he's one of the leaders in solitary confinement, or fighting back against solitary confinement, which the rest of the world views as torture, but in the U.S. it's practiced widely. Cuban immigrant. As Miles, we don't deport people to Cuba as national policy, but still, nonetheless, he was swooped up and it has been detained for the last 6 months. I will say it'd be great. I don't know if this will give people a harder time or if it's okay. It'd be great to get maybe a couple hundred Defiant shirts out to that group, so people, when they come in, can rock some Defiant shirts and whatever else, or a couple maybe a couple dozen hoodies we can send out to them, and make sure that all those guards. I was thinking this the other day when DHS, when TSA was out and ICE was at the airport, and I was going through the airport. I want them to remember our name and face. Like, I want all of them to remember our name and face. And so if we can get a bunch of Defiant shirts and sweatshirts going through that place, so our members, so they know there's an army of people, that's hundreds of thousands strong now, that have their back. That'd be great. That'd be great to do for those people. So we should figure it out. We'll talk after the call, figure out how to do that.
Man, that's good. Yeah, Mercedes, we should figure out how to get in touch with them. That's a cool one. I mean, and anything else like that's happening around the country, it'd be awesome to provide them support, but also give them a way to kind of defy these.
Yeah. You're in no position to shout at these guys if you're visiting your family or whatever. So it'd be nice to have a little bit of a message, as you go through. If it doesn't stop that, we don't, by no means do we want to, make a hard situation harder by any means, but I don't think it would.
Yeah. Wow. I love that idea. I was just writing that down on my to-dos for you and I to chat about. Xander, let's take some questions from defiance.org members before we jump. Christy asks, must we call it an assassination attempt? Wasn't it really a security breach? The guy wasn't near the president. I mean, Christy, is a good point. I mean, this is ultimately what comes down to evidence gathering and what law enforcement finds. That manifesto is out there. I read it. I think a lot of other people read it. He, doesn't make an explicit claim in there that he is, the guy was going to kill the president. He does make clear that he was targeting unspecified administration officials. I think what you could say, though, is, if he is targeting public figures, whether it's an assassination attempt against the president or not, public figures, if targeted for killings, that's technically an assassination. And so that's why I use the term from that time period. Look, it's clear this guy wanted to harm people that were public figures. And even if they're people that we vehemently disagree with, people we might hate, that's what this guy was trying to do. He certainly wasn't going there to try to join the dinner and have a debate at the table. And there's no debate when you bring a weapon to the conversation. But what is so extraordinary is that this administration would play the double talk game on political violence the way they have. Again, Donald Trump has relished in assassination attempts against other people. Okay, I don't think we have the clip, but the way Donald Trump reacted in talking about Nancy Pelosi's home when it was invaded, when her husband was targeted by a man who clearly was trying to go in there to try to kill the third in line to the presidency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. What did Donald Trump do? He mocked it. He mocked it. He mocked the assassination attempt. I can't think of a single public figure, a single elected Democrat in Congress or the Senate who this weekend mocked Donald Trump or his cabinet or people who were in that room for facing the prospect of assassination. Can you imagine what would have happened? You know, Jamie Raskin, we just showed that clip. What if Jamie Raskin went on Face the Nation and he made jokes about Donald Trump getting killed? What this administration would have done to him. But
it doesn't happen. It's not existent on the left. It doesn't happen. They don't, the political leadership and leadership writ large doesn't make jokes. By the way, if you're wondering what to label it, here's things Trump called January 6th, a day of love, patriots, hostages, peacefully and patriotically. These are all terms he used for January 6th. So, you know, it's a free country. We've got free speech. You can call it what you will. That's what Trump called the folks instigating that event, and how he's described that event. So call it what you will. It is definitionally, though, it was an assassination attempt. Like, if you're wondering kind of what it was, the guy had a manifesto to go kill administrative figures, and that seems to be what he was out to do.
That's right. Let's take some other questions here. Sunil asks, question, can we have little cards with the name defiance.org on it to hand out at rallies and meetings? Sure. I mean, Sunil, you're welcome to those cards. But here's one thing that we had been talking about, and Xander, feel free to weigh in on this. We had been talking about, a lot of people have asked us to start, Sunil, with, you know, yard signs and window signs, just to like get those out there. And, you know, it's my bad that you guys don't already have those, because I assumed, you know, just in my mind, I always bracketed that as, people only do that for political campaigns. No, this is the cause of our time, is defying this, man. You all want to proudly claim your defiance. And so we're talking about, you know, getting some yard signs and window signs spun up so we can get those out there.
Yeah, we also get to. We were also told about stickers a lot in the beginning. We've never gotten around to like a big stickers.
A lot of people.
We got to get you guys stickers too. But yeah, you know, it was like honestly really special moment for me, Miles. I was out at the Communities Not Cages event on Saturday, and I saw some Defiance hats. I wandered over to them, gave everyone a big bear hug, but it was cool. And they were saying specifically that they're like, what I love about the name is it's not just a promotion of an organization I like. It is a spirit that I felt was missing in this moment. And it's so fun to be able to kind of wear it on your body or on your hat, or, you know, in the form of yard signs. Yeah, more swag. We'll get on it. I'm putting it down. Miles, can you put that next to the t-shirts? I'm seeing some comments, by the way.
More swag.
I'm seeing some comments about making the t-shirts a 1-for-1 thing, like us putting up the opportunity to buy a t-shirt to donate to and sending that out to the group. That would be great.
Idea. That's a great idea. Okay, yeah, we got to get in touch with that group. At a minimum, we got to have them on the program.
Yeah,
we need 100%. more. We need more 100%. Of these stories. Like, you know, the bakery that we did. We got to bring those people on.
Yeah, and I'm reminded all the time. But you know, going to this Communities Not Cages event, the people I met that were organizers organized 50 people. Like, I think sometimes because people watch our shows and we have, you know, 100 plus thousand, you know, subscribers or whatnot, that's not really how shit gets.
100
million. Yeah, don't check that. Don't reference check that. It's 10 million. We're number one across every platform. But it's like the big work of democracy is done by a bunch of people organizing somewhere between 20 to 100 of their neighbors. And then that times a million is how our democracy works, how it functions, how people are actually organized, actually moved, actually persuaded. And you know, that story we shared today is a great example of it. The people I bumped into over the weekend was a great example of it. The people who make democracy work are you all that are listening to this and then going out and talking to your friends and family and making sure they show up, and you're joining your indivisible groups and you're engaged in local politics. Like, that is the beautiful thing about this country when it's functioning at a high degree. And I think actually, you know, because of this threat, and there's very few countries that transform themselves outside of a threat. Like, the New Deal happened because of the Great Depression, right? The middle class really boomed after World War II. Like, these great moments, you know, in progress happen after very challenging moments. And this challenging moment has created a bunch of mini community organizers all across this country. And we're going to use that to get a victory here, but moving forward to get more and more victories. And it is a social cohesion we didn't have before this moment.
Dude, I got to tell you, you are like your coach today. Get us hyped up to go on the field, Coach. Like, this is good stuff. Let's roll. Xander's got a new podcast.
It's the new camera. It's really the camera. It's the camera and the close up. I'm feeling more responsible. You know what? It's funny. This has been one journey in growing up. This whole process. I remember a week ago, I was looking at. I had the comment. If you ever see me look over, this is your comments. This is the thread right here. Yeah. And I saw someone said, Xander, take your hat off. I was like, damn, all right. So I went, it was turn your hat around. It wasn't take it off. I was wearing it backwards. So I was like, all right, I need to wear my hat forward when I got it on. I need to go get a haircut. You guys are all slowly making me grow up, and I appreciate you all.
That's too good. That's too good. Let's see. What other questions do we have? We've got CD says, how can we put more pressure on corporate media to tell the truth? X-Man, I'm interested in your answer on this. My fast one would be, it's honestly what you all are doing out there is you're sending a demand signal, a consumer demand signal that you don't want to be afraid. You want to hear the truth. And that's a commercial signal to them too, is they want to see that you want to hear. I mean, there's a reason why like MS Now's ratings, have been surging. I don't know. I think if you go back and look, right after Trump's election, a lot of the, outlets tied to the political opposition, their ratings tanked. Okay, well, why are their ratings soaring right now? Because people want to know what's happening. People want to hear not just the administration line, they want to hear the truth. And so some folks in corporate media, I think, are getting that signal, but this is going to be especially important, CD, when we see something like CNN finally fully taken over by Paramount and by Trump's buddies, that we put the pressure on them and we call them out. Xander, you got a spicier approach? You always do.
No, I actually think you nailed it. I think you all are doing it. The market responds to where you put your time and where you put your money, and increasingly people are putting their money and they're spending their time into platforms like this, creators like us, that are not trying to both sides this moment, that are being frank about what's happening, that are genuinely trying to be helpful. And there's a lot of great folks out there. So I think it's happening. I'm not holding my breath for corporate legacy media to pivot fast enough and keep up. I think just the way they're constructed and what their goals are kind of archaic, and they're not really built for this moment. What I do see though, in some ways, and we've seen this with our friends at Midas Touch, is them starting to build beyond just a single creator, single podcast, and building their own network of truth tellers and content creators and whatnot. You see it a little bit with Courier in a different way. They're building, regional and state-based, they're bringing back regional and state-based journalism in some ways. And so we are seeing some of the winners of this new media moment start to expand out beyond just like a single podcast and whatnot, and starting to replace those corporate models with a more earnest, more straightforward, and more kind of built for this moment network.
Yep. And we're still trying to get it right over on this end, is like there is a new ecosystem in independent media where, we're an independent media effort, but also an organization that's out there doing the work. Yes. And we're continuing to mature that every single day and try to get that right and try to balance our time right between telling you all what's happening, trying to expose these stories, but then spending a lot of time operationalizing efforts to do something about it. And Xander, on that front, I've got good news for you and everyone listening, because Defiance.org members helped to launch something very important last week called GTFOICE.org, which is a nationwide rapid response network that you can sign up for, and where we and our partners will provide you alerts if there are new ICE prison camps being stood up in this country. And even more than that, even if there's one being stood up and it's not near you, we want to be able to give people options on how they can help fight back in some of these other places. And we're going to be talking about it tonight, Xander, in this vein of corporate media. with Rachel Maddow on MS Now. So we and our friends at Project Saltbox will be on Rachel Maddow tonight in the 9 p.m. Eastern hour talking about this effort. And a big shout out to Maddow. We actually have her in part to thank for this because she had highlighted this new media upstart, Project Saltbox, a few weeks ago, and what they are doing to get data from the source, from government contracts, to find out what facilities are going to be opened next. And we reached out to them and said, let's partner. Why don't we work together and create this nationwide alert network? And they're a wonderful, tiny, scrappy, outstanding team who said, yeah, let's do it. And we are a wonderful, tiny, scrappy, outstanding team. And so, now we're working on that effort. So excited to take that on to Rachel Maddow tonight and get that in front of more Americans so that we can really make something of that rapid response network.
Let's go. I was walking around with the GTFOI sign at the Community's Not Cages rally this weekend. Everyone was fired up. When I told them what it was, everyone's fired up. And when you hear how successful that these scrappy groups like Project Saltbox have been thus far at getting sales canceled, detention centers paused, etc. It really does give you a lot more hope. We can come together. We can stop this effort. And I worked, in the fight against mass incarceration for a while. If you're going to do one thing to fight mass incarceration, it's to limit the beds. If they don't have beds, they don't have a place to put people, it impacts how they police. It impacts the justice system they're running people through because they literally don't have options. And so they have to resort to other things like probation, parole, or whatnot, much less terrible situations than the type of confined, torturous conditions that we know about that these detention centers are producing.
That's right, my friend. That's right. Well, we are going to continue to get the word out there, but a big thank you to Defiance.org members. You are making this effort very real, and hopefully we can have a big impact in mobilizing folks where it matters most. And that's not just new detention centers. I mean, as there are developments with some of these other existing detention camps that ICE is trying to create, our partners, including that Save America Movement and Project Saltbox, are going to be the ones to tell us, hey, here's an intervention we can take. Here's a difference we can make. Let's hit up those folks in the network and get them active. So thank you for sharing that with friends and family and for supporting the work here at Defiance.org. That is our show today. Xander, a lot to talk about. I know people were feeling, a lot of feelings after this weekend, including anyone who went deep down the rabbit holes of conspiracy theories in the wake of the attack on Saturday. Hopefully, we've helped reorient things a little bit today, but we're going to stay strong. We're going to keep fighting, folks. We're going to protect this country. We're going to do it the right way. We're going to do it nonviolently, and we're going to do it together. So, Xander, let's have them all back tomorrow night. What time?
2 p.m. Pacific. Miles is an East Coast time zone slob, so whenever I can.
The old 2 p.m. Pacific. Join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific, otherwise known as 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm sure we've got Defiance.org members in Brussels who are like, actually, join us live at 11 p.m.
What is that time zone?
Is it GMT? I don't know.
GMT's I see that come up.
We'll try to do right by y'all. But thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for supporting the Club for Courageous Americans and courageous people generally, because y'all aren't all Americans. And join us tomorrow for another great program, another conversation, and then join us Wednesday for our weekly mission brief. We will announce more that we can all do to defy Donald Trump's corruption and to protect this country. In the meantime, as we always say, stay loud, friends, stay brave, and stay together. We'll see you tomorrow.